Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Crowded Booth Live. We have four, as Palmer does not have – Palmer, you've gained enough notoriety, I think, with the show now that you don't even have to be introduced. We're just going to throw you in there automatically. But I'm not going to ask Ralph. I'm not going to ask Will. Palmer, how's your week been so far?
It's been good. It was nice to get back within Sanford Stadium. On a personal note, I hadn't been in there to cover a game since – the 2019 season. They only played 3 home games in 2020, and press box availability was so limited. I was not able to cover a game at home for Georgia, and so it was nice to be back there watching, beautiful weather on Saturday. It's been great weather here in Athens all week. Georgia baseball playing tonight. It was just good weekend, and nice to see the Bulldogs back between the hedges.
Yeah, no, a lot of people got to resonate with that. There were some, for the first time, I'll say in over a year, we've seen high attendance because we didn't get a spring game last year for a lot of schools. And so I know schools like Alabama, the joke was, come on, guys, you at least got to try. I mean, they had, what'd you tell me, 45,000 just about they had packed Bryant-Denny on Saturday?
Something like that. I know it was north of 40,000, far more than any other school had for their spring game.
But hey, that shows you the pageantry and the
love
of college
know.
football.
I don't know about Ole Miss. Ole Miss hasn't played yet. Did Mississippi State play there?
I don't think so.
Well, they might have more then because they have like almost no restrictions.
They might have had more at the baseball series this weekend.
Did you guys see that first off? Did you guys see that First off, what a series. And honestly, what a weekend of college baseball. You had those two going at it. And then in Tennessee, you had the Vols and Vandy going at it, which, anytime. I think Vanderbilt is, at this point for baseball, is must-watch TV. When either Leiter or Rocker on the mound, it's must-watch TV. So, I know that we talked on the show last week, guys, about how Georgia handled Vanderbilt pretty well when they went up there, took 2 of 3. But, Palmer, going back to G-Day, you never want to overreact, and this is what Will and I were having a conversation on the Bo Nix side of things. Will got a question in the mailbag about it, and it was worded correctly. I felt like Will. I mean, it wasn't. It was worded correctly, but for you, Palmer,
it was a fair question.
Fair question. You don't want to overreact. I want to ask you, what are some of your takeaways, and then I want to point to something that 24/7 Sports posted about. Kirby Smart. He's under a lot of pressure this year because you do have that coveted quarterback. You feel like that Georgia's been needing for the past couple seasons.
Yeah, I know what you're about to reference to, and I did see that today. Definitely, caught my eye. In terms of G-Day, I think the biggest takeaways would be you mentioned JT Daniels in the coveted quarterback situation. Georgia feels very comfortable in what they've got at quarterback. I think if you watched the Bulldogs last season, it's a polar opposite. Complete 180 from where they were last year. Just felt like they could never get the proper quarterback play. String a couple things together last season in between Dwan Mathis, Stetson Bennett, until honestly, it really all started with the 2 transfers, the blow of Jamie Newman and his opting out and JT Daniels not being healthy enough to go until late into the season. So, I think headed into this season, Georgia feels very comfortable where they're at quarterback. JT Daniels went 28 of 41 for 324 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think Georgia dropped back, but it was like 100 times in the scrimmage. Obviously the scrimmage is set up more so in a way that it is, very pass heavy rather than, having guys bang in the trenches, risk injury there. You'd rather just, have the wide receivers and DBs run routes and, let the quarterback show off their arms for the fans. But I think that's kind of what Georgia's going to do this season, open up the passing game a lot more. Now, I don't think that by no means do I think that you're going to see Georgia completely abandon the run. It's still RBU, and they still feel very confident in the running backs that they have. But like I said, they feel very comfortable in the quarterback situation that they have. And, as a result, I think they're going to open things up a little bit more.
I think too, Palmer, and I'll come back to you with this because there were some standouts, and obviously JT Daniels, people get excited about that. They say it was over 600 total yards that were thrown through the air through all quarterbacks. But Carson Beck looked good. I mean, he looked good, and I know Kirby Smart said that there were some things that, and Ralph's been really high on him ever since he came and committed to Georgia. You feel like there could be some good depth there. Obviously, Brock Vandegrift, just seeing him play was something I know a lot of Georgia fans want to see. But there was a certain number 5 in red in the receiving core, and we talked about this on previous shows with you. How was George Pickens going to be replaced? I don't know if you could replace his production with just one player, but talk to me about who wore number 5 in red and how he contributed in the receiving core on Saturday.
Yeah, Adonai Mitchell, better known as AD amongst the team. He led the team in receptions with 7 catches, was targeted the most of any receiver with 13 targets from JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. And those two, Daniels and Mitchell really looked comfortable, which I think is a great thing, going back to the idea of replacing George Pickens. JT Daniels and George Pickens were on the same page down the stretch of last season. I remember hearing from Daniels after that Mississippi State game, his debut, where George Pickens had a couple of big catches. He was asked about, his comfort level with Pickens, and he said, hey, I feel really comfortable throwing it to George. When he's in a one-on-one situation, I'm looking that way. That's my first read. A 50-50 ball with George is more like a 75-25, 90-10 situation. And so, in terms of replacing him, you've got to have someone that has similar, maybe not the same chemistry as Pickens and Daniels, but similar chemistry nonetheless. And I think Adonai Mitchell and JT Daniels certainly had that. You saw him running a lot of the same routes that Pickens was running. They targeted him on a back shoulder fade. They targeted him on some 50-50 balls. In terms of just his build, I know we've mentioned, Justin Robinson as a guy who could replace Pickens in terms of his build, and he didn't play on Saturday. Georgia was banged up and was down 6 scholarship receivers in Pickens. Jermaine Burton didn't play. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, Jackson Meeks, Justin Robinson, and Dominic Blaylock. Arian Smith was also in a non-contact jersey and running with the second-team offense, just to get that first-team offense and first-team defense as many reps as possible, tackling and taking a tackle and ball security and all that. But going back to Mitchell, I think it was just really important for him and Daniels to develop that chemistry, and sort of, start to begin the process of replacing Pickens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's going to be a tough thing no matter what, Palmer, because I definitely can see, we talked about this last week. Pickens may have played his last, game in Sanford Stadium in regular season or in a Georgia uniform. We're going to get to maybe some attrition over at Stegman. But I have one more question for you because I think it is big, and I'm going to reference that post today. 24/7 Sports came out with kind of a top list of some coaches who might be under some pressure and not necessarily on the hot seat per se. But what are your expectations? And I know, we're going to have this conversation. It's going to heat up as we get closer to SEC Media Days. And then before you know it, we're going to be in Charlotte getting ready for Georgia and Clemson. But when you see what Kirby Smart has to play with this year, and you see, we'll say the what he has in the tool chest per se with this roster, do you feel like that this season is playoff or bust for Georgia? I mean, I know that Alabama's constantly standing in the way. Bryce Young looked really good. National media is starting to pick up some steam with him. That's going to continue. But for you, what are your expectations for Kirby Smart in this squad here in 2021?
Yeah, like you said, I think there is a lot of pressure on Kirby Smart this year, and it's not necessarily a hot seat. I by no means do I think Kirby Smart has any chance of getting fired after this season if Georgia doesn't make the playoffs. But I think that there is that expectation that Georgia is going to be playing in Atlanta at least in terms of taking on whoever wins the West, most likely Alabama. But there's some big competition there with A&M. Auburn bringing in Brian Harsin, and LSU maybe coming back. The West is wide open, and I think there is that expectation that Georgia is going to end up in Atlanta. Obviously, there's plenty of obstacles to go through. You mentioned that Clemson game to open the season, and I think that's really going to determine, kind of set the tone for Georgia's season. If they win that, I think Georgia fans are going to be expecting a perfect regular season, and if they lose that, well, Georgia's got to meet that expectation of getting to Atlanta. More than likely, they're going to have to run the table and finish 11-1. So regardless of the outcome of that Clemson game, I think the expectation is going to be that Georgia makes Atlanta, takes on whoever wins the West, more than likely Alabama, and competes. And I think given the fact that Georgia is testing themselves so early in the season with Clemson, and you look at past college football playoff teams that have made appearances, one loss doesn't kill you, and especially a loss in a tough environment. Maybe not a tough environment, but a tough matchup nonetheless against Clemson in that opening week. I think if Georgia were to end up 12-1, that would probably mean that they win the SEC, lose to Clemson, and win the SEC championship. They're in, as the SEC champion. That's on sort of been an auto bid. But I think there would certainly be a case for Georgia if they were to go 11-1 with a loss to Clemson and then put up a great fight against, an undefeated Alabama team coming out of the West. So I wouldn't say it's playoff or bust, but I think that there is that expectation that they're at least going to be, come Selection Sunday, that they're going to be in the conversation for one of those Final Four spots.
And I think that's huge too. We've had the conversation, and we're gonna, I'm gonna open up the question because I know Ralph has a question about the defense real quick, and then Will is going to take us over to Stegman with some questions about Georgia basketball. But I think it's big because, and I'll lead into this for you, Ralph, because obviously with Georgia, the big thing is the East is wide open. I mean, obviously Kyle Trask and kind of some of the weapons were gone. But Ralph, I know you were kind of thinking about what is the defense going to look like, because it did lose a little bit. But I think that front seven is going to be pretty strong. I know, Ralph, that that's something that you were wanting to know.
Well, I'm really worried about their secondary. I know they lost a lot, especially with some transfers. But I just want to know who's going to step up for Georgia really this year. Obviously, because you're going to play a lot of teams who can air it out this year. So obviously your front seven is going to dominate, but that secondary is where I'm kind of concerned for them.
Yeah, I think, you didn't learn as much about the secondary this spring as you might have hoped, especially in that G-Day scrimmage. I think a lot of fans came into the spring thinking, okay, we're gonna learn a lot about the secondary because they're going to get tested by George Pickens, they're going to get tested by Arian Smith, they're going to get tested by Jermaine Burton, on down the line, and that wasn't the case. Obviously Smith was out there, but he was very limited in what he was doing. But there was no Pickens, there was no Burton, and there, the secondary was going up against probably Georgia's third, fourth, fifth, sixth options, headed into the fall season. And so I think you probably didn't learn as much about the secondary as Georgia fans would be hoping for. I think the names I think that coming out of spring, that there is a clear separation, of the top three corners from the rest of the pack. And with the top three being Amir Speed, who's a senior who's waited his turn, got the opportunity to speak with the media this spring, which I think, is typically pretty telling of where you stand with Kirby Smart. If he's sending you out there as a representative of the program. And if I recall, it was pretty early on in spring, for him to be sending Speed out there to answer questions. He knew that the questions were going to be coming about the secondary, and he felt very comfortable with Speed going out there to answer those. I think that probably says a lot about where Speed stands on the field as much as it does off the field. But Speed, along with Keely Ringo and Jalen Kimber, those two guys are second-year players that I think have taken big steps. Kimber, is played a little bit last year, but he was banged up. And I think he probably is – I think fans would probably not have expected him to be maybe ahead of Keely Ringo, but, the coaching staff is incredibly high on Kimber. and understanding that Ringo, this was his first time practicing in a Georgia uniform. He was banged up. Had a torn labrum all of last fall, and so really didn't get his freshman experience. So while he is a second-year player, he's really in his first year of practicing and playing and being in this system. So I think, those three stand out. And obviously they're replacing outside of the outside corners. They're replacing the interior defensive backs, the nickel back, the star. And I think Tyke Smith, the transfer from West Virginia, is a name to watch there. Latavius Brainey as well. He's a guy that played that position in the Peach Bowl against Cincinnati, ran with the number 1 defense on G-Day. Those two are definitely names to watch. I would also say, while I mentioned along the same lines of Smith, it would not surprise me if Georgia, hit the transfer portal hard for someone in the secondary. They obviously feel very comfortable with their safeties. Lewis Seen is returning, and Christopher Smith is returning with half a year of starting experience since, Richard LeCount went down on Halloween, with his and in that motorcycle accident. And so, they feel great about the back end of the secondary. They want to, they've got some questions to answer on the outside, but I feel like Georgia fans and I think there's no one that you would rather have, facing this kind of challenge than Kirby Smart in terms of he's a guy that played in the secondary. That's his area of expertise. He loves coaching the secondary. He's obviously has a secondary coach, but he's out there every day working with the defensive backs. And so, I think this is a challenge that he's ready to take on, that Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator Dan Lanning's ready to take on, that new defensive backs coach Jamila Adai is ready to take on, as well as senior analyst Will Muschamp. I think that they feel comfortable with who they have, and they're ready to, kind of answer some of those questions headed into the fall.
I love how you said senior analyst Will Muschamp. That's a nice addition to have, especially in that role.
I didn't know senior analyst was a title.
They'll make up anything. They'll make up anything for him, I guess. I know Will wants to start us off with this question, but let's go over to Stegman because Georgia basketball has just been a revolving door right now under Tom Crean. Will knows that I have been in the case of let's let it play out. Palmer wrote a dissertation in a text to me that I didn't respond to until so I'm terrible at responding to text. So I apologize for that. But he was long enough to be an article and hit that threshold in 24/7 Sports. I know that enough. But Will, for you, I know the big news for today for Georgia basketball was obviously Severe Wheeler, and I know that's a big impact that you saw. Was kind of one of the bright spots this past season.
Yeah, Palmer, I just wanted to hear about Severe Wheelers, kind of what because it kind of feels like being April 20th that the dust is kind of settled on guys deciding they're going to go in the portal or going to the NBA. I know the NBA guys can still come back, but it kind of seems like it's been a few weeks and rosters were kind of starting to get solidified. So just kind of like what happened the last couple of weeks? Why did Severe Wheeler decide now to transfer a couple weeks later, and where do you think he'll end up?
Yeah, it's certainly a tough blow for Georgia because, like you said, it sort of felt like rosters were getting solidified. Georgia was doing more of the adding to the roster than they were necessarily accounting for subtraction, and now they're back doing that. Definitely a huge blow when you lose your leading scorer, leading assist leader, and the conference assist leader. I think he was 5th in the conference in assists as Georgia just hits a home run out to right field off the scoreboard. I see that out of the corner of my eye. But, I think
you're in right field, right? I don't want to cut you off.
The house is in right field. The house is in right field. That one was headed towards my window. But back on Xavier Wheeler, as I can see Stegman Coliseum in the distance as well, that is a tough blow. He was kind of the face of the program this last season. I would say Anthony Edwards was 2 years ago, but Xavier was right there with him. And those two were buddies and really spoke for the players the last 2 years. And I think, along with Wheeler losing Tamani Kamara, he kind of took over as that secondary voice of the program this past season, and they lose him as well. So I think, looking at Georgia and where Tom Crean is at, the summary of my text to Bryce would be, I agree with Georgia keeping Tom Crean around. There's a lot of Georgia fans that wanted him gone after this past season. They felt like the program hadn't taken enough steps. Like he said, it's been a revolving door of guys coming in and out. Now you look at the entire 2018 recruiting class, the entire 2019 recruiting class is gone. And I think that 2019 recruiting class hurts Georgia fans even more because they didn't get to see any of those guys as upperclassmen. It was a very highly rated recruiting class headlined by Edwards. And obviously that's a loss that you kind of expected coming into that season. You didn't think you would see a second year with him, but you did think that you would see a second and a third year with some of those other guys. And so, I guess, looking back on Tom Crean's time at Georgia, the first year he inherited a situation where the roster that he had was not ready to play his style of basketball. He cleans house after that first year, brings in his guys in that 2019 recruiting class, and really has people sold on Georgia basketball. The attendance numbers were up. They were breaking attendance records at Stegman. There was a ton of excitement, and they took a step in the right direction. They won more SEC games that year. They were more on the national stage because of Anthony Edwards and because of the progress that they had made. Year 3, they get enough of those guys to come back where, again, they win more games than the previous year. They finish above 500 for the first time under Crean. They were, they played really good basketball at times. It just wasn't consistent enough. And I think, the next step in the progression of Georgia basketball under Tom Crean is to play good basketball consistently. And, I think 2 big pieces of that were going to be Xavier Wheeler and Tumani Kamara, and Ty Fagan as well, and Christian Brown as well. Those are 4 guys that are starting lineup caliber guys that are all now gone. And so, I think it's Crean is having to scramble now. He's really hitting the transfer portal hard. I don't know that is the right way to build a program as much as it is build a team. But that's kind of the hand he's been dealt, and he's having to adjust on the fly and build a team that can take the court and, go out and win this next year and try and improve, continue the improvement that the Georgia fans have seen under Crean each and every year. So, I don't know if that really answers your question. But that's kind of my assessment of where Georgia's at with the basketball program. I was surprised to see Xavier Wheeler leave. I think that really hurts Georgia fans considering he's been the face of the program. I know that he was in College Station this past weekend. He was originally committed to Texas A&M. He's a Houston native. So it would not surprise me to see him head closer to home. I've seen some talk from Kentucky fans that they need a point guard and that, whenever the conference leader in assists is available, Kentucky feels like a spot that guy could land. He's not necessarily the scorer or the shooter that Kentucky needs, but losing Georgia's top player to Kentucky would really, really hurt Georgia fans.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when Ashton Hagen went over and committed to Kentucky, he received a plethora of boos inside Stegman Coliseum. If Xavier Wheeler did the same thing, he'd probably receive the same thing, the same welcome from the Stegman faithful. I want to throw this out here because you texted this to me and you talked about how to build a program. And Will, I want to bring you in on this too, and Ralph as well. Because, Will, you've seen how Auburn and how Bruce Pearl has built this program. And I think that's what Georgia's trying to do because they do feel the pressure. Because now across the Chattahoochee, especially with the rise of Alabama over the past couple of years and the team they put together this season, there is the pressure that you kind of got to, we'll say, the term keeping up with the Joneses. They want to keep up with these other schools. You don't want to fall behind. So, Will, you've seen Auburn build their program. And I want to get your thoughts on this because you agree you can't go to the transfer portal and just pull players. But like Palmer said in his text to me, he's going to have to do that, which will in turn hurt the program in a long term because you're never able to set that foundation and have that team chemistry. Yeah.
Is that for me?
That was for you. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, it makes it so much more difficult to build your program through the transfer portal. If you're going to go the Bruce Pearl Auburn route, which I think Georgia should model that because they were in similar places, you've just got to decide what style of basketball you're going to play because that's what Bruce Pearl did. He said, this is the style of play I'm going to have. and I've got to get the players in that are going to play it no matter what, no matter how long it takes. Get a small, fast point guard like Jared Harper, and then find a Javon McCormick to fill in after him, almost the same type player. Of course, McCormick can't shoot as well. And then bring in Sharif Cooper, similar style as well, can't shoot as well, but still can score. And then bring in Wendell Green from Eastern Kentucky, if I can get it out. Small, fast, three-point shooting point guard. And then you use the transfer portal to plug in pieces like Walker Kessler, a big that can shoot, that can run the floor. A big piece, literally 7-footer. Is going to play the type of basketball that Bruce Pearl wants to play. He's going to fit in perfectly. Not your typical 7-footer. We've talked about a lot. He can run the floor. He can shoot. And he can be a rim protector at 7 foot tall. So Crean has just got to commit to his style if he's going to follow that model. Commit to his style. And, no matter how long it takes, if they give him the time, he should be able to succeed. But just commit to your style, get your players in there, and who cares how long it takes.
And I think that's pressure too, because I'll even throw this out here, Palmer, and former players, especially namely J.J. Frazier and Jawan Parker, have been very vocal on social media about this. It's actually crazy. I showed Ralph a DM today. We're going to have J.J. Frazier on our podcast that comes out. He's going to be talking, and I'm going to give him the open floor to talk about the program. They're very big because fans, and maybe some of the players, they loved Mark Fox, and Mark Fox was consistent. You can at least give him that. Georgia was consistent on Mark Fox. Now they had to take a step back, but a lot of times, and Will, you kind of alluded to this, you kind of take that little bit of momentary step back to take the steps forward. Georgia has yet to take the steps forward. Of course, it's year three. Year three was weird, but I think that's something big. Going back to it, but Palmer, is that kind of the consensus around the hot cold program? It's just the coaches are, not necessarily the coaches, but the players are kind of buying in. But then, like you said, because after SEC tournament, Severe Wheeler was excited. It seemed like excited, and then kind of flipped a switch where he said he doesn't want to not play in the NCAA tournament again. He doesn't feel like he can accomplish that at Georgia.
Yeah, you saw that in the ESPN article that was written about Wheeler's transfer, and I think that's really frustrating to Georgia players. College basketball players in general, to watch the NCAA tournament and not be a part of it. And so I think, kind of like Will was saying, Tom Crean has to, solidify his identity and his style here. But I just don't know how much longer he has to do that. He's had 3 years to build that style. He had that small, fast point guard, and that small, fast point guard decided to leave the program today. And so, I think the problem here is somewhere along the lines there's been something where the guys that did buy into what Crean's message was of rebuilding this Georgia program, keep in mind that in 2019 recruiting class, really was Crean's first group of his own guys. They were the first guy that came in, and they were, his team. All those guys, somewhere along the lines, whether it was after the first year, after the second year, those guys are now gone. And so I think somewhere there is, maybe a change in message, or, they're not buying into what Crean is trying to sell them anymore, that they have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, that they have a chance to compete in the SEC. I don't know that he's trying to sell, a national championship hope, but, I think anytime that you feel like you can compete, and I know he's trying to sell, being competitive in the SEC and playing in this, really competitive, strong basketball conference. And somewhere, along the line, Georgia has not competed enough in the SEC for the players to continue to buy into what Tom Crean is saying.
Yeah, and that's the tough part about it. It's what you talked about, Will. It shouldn't matter how long is, and Bruce Pearl. People look at Auburn like, oh wow, Auburn's this, but there were some lean years, especially when Pearl got there to build it what it come.
Right,
and it's just kind of
that's the difference in the problem that Crean's facing. He took over a much better situation than Bruce Pearl did. Mark Fox was extremely successful at Georgia. And so it was kind of expected to Crean to continue that and do a little bit better. Bruce Pearl literally started from scratch. Yeah. He took over a program that lost to Columbus State University. just a few years before he got the job. And so he had all the time that he needed to do it. And it looks like Crean may not have that time.
Yeah, he may not have that time.
How long has Bruce Pearl been at Auburn?
I think this past season was year 5. I think. I want to say. I think 2016 was his first year.
So in year 3, they were making the Final Four. That's the biggest difference. Is that
right?
It didn't take him as long to. He had the time. He had the the investment of the program and the athletic department to give him that opportunity. But he took advantage of that. I'm not sure that. I think Tom Crean had, a really great start to where, Georgia fans were really bought into the program, but he didn't take advantage of that. He won 5 SEC games with that. And, his first year they won 3 games in the SEC. Then they win 5, then they win 7. And so, kind of like I was saying, they've made steps in the right direction. And so I understand keeping him around for this 4th year. Add on to the fact that kind of the same situation Auburn was facing with the football coach. The buyout for Tom Crean is over $7 million. And I'm not sure that that's money that Georgia's athletic department, Georgia boosters, want going towards basketball. But ultimately, I think that the athletic department has to make a decision at some point in terms of, are we going to invest in this basketball program or not? Because you've seen – throughout the SEC, like Bryce mentioned with Alabama earlier, you've seen great, schools that have great football programs or maybe not even great football programs, but, schools that are invested in their football program, they've had success in basketball too. Throughout the SEC, you saw Alabama this year. Florida has done it in the past. Tennessee, obviously they're not having the most success on the football field right now, but that is a football school. Auburn, LSU. I think that there's got to be some sort of investment from the athletic department and a buy-in from the athletic department to allow Georgia's basketball program to grow and get to that point where it can be on that same level. I just don't know how much longer Tom Crean has to do that, because he's had 3 years to do that and hasn't done much with it.
It's interesting you bring that up, Palmer, because during the middle of the season when Georgia was struggling, one of my friends that's a Georgia fan was texting me about it, and I said, you gotta give him control of the program. You gotta give him total control. And he's like, he's got control. I was like, no, he clearly doesn't. If he had full control, he's a good enough coach and can run a program well enough to turn it around. I mean, I compared to Auburn because that's what I know best. Auburn gave Bruce Pearl everything he wanted, everything he's needed, and he's got it turned around.
So I went and looked this up. 2014 was Bruce Pearl's first year as Auburn's head coach.
Okay, wow.
So it took 5 years to get that Final Four. So like you said, they did give him the time to get there. Looking at his records at Auburn, he was kind of on that same track as Tom Crean. Won 4 games in the SEC his first year, 5 games his second year, 7 games his third year. Tom Crean has won 3, 5, and 7. But then they took that next step in year 4 under Pearl and went 13-5 in the SEC, tied for first in the league, and made it to the round of 32, made it to the NCAA tournament. So, back to Georgia, I think the expectation, is, hey, we've given him the opportunity to continue to make steps in the right direction. He's done that so far. We're going to give him that 4th year, and he needs to make the most of that. And in my opinion, needs to be probably above 500 in the SEC, maybe making the NCAA tournament, at least in the conversation for it, and definitely playing postseason basketball. I think, even this year, there was talks of, is Georgia going to be playing in the NIT? Not they are going to be playing in the NIT, for sure. I think that they need to be confidently saying we're going to be playing postseason basketball come March 2022, with the hopes that is the NCAA tournament, but feeling very confident in terms of their standing with the NIT as well.
I'm going to keep you on for a couple more minutes because we do have a guest coming on at 7:40 that we're going to talk to and kind of locally. But how do you build that foundation? Because I think that's the question as Georgia fans are kind of finding themselves in, is because, like you texted me, whatever happens from here on out, let's say that they don't pay the $7 million. It drops down to $3 million, correct, if I'm right, after the next season. That's something more manageable. But like Will has said over and over again, unless you give the coach full control, unless you say, you can have it, we're going to actually invest in the program, you can only go so far. And I think that's kind of the trouble that we're seeing. So, Palmer, what would be if you are – I don't want to say if you are Tom Crean, but if you're an athletic department, you need to set the foundation for the school at Georgia that is rich in resources. And when I say resources, we all four here know what I mean in that. But Georgia's very rich in the resource category. How would you go about building it? Is it have to be something where, let's say, Crean leaves, you got to wipe the slate clean like it never happened? Or are you going to have to build off of, if there is anything to build off of?
Well, I'll give you two answers here. I think looking towards next year under Tom Crean, they've got 3 scholarship spots left today. They had 4 after Wheeler decided to leave, and they got a commit earlier today out of the Atlanta area, Christian Wright, who's a point guard. I think with the 3 spots that they have left, they've got to address point guard, probably a starting point guard, starting caliber point guard, as well as they need a big man. That is something that Tom Crean has not had is a big man, and you've seen it hurt him. I think back to watching Auburn and those big men last season. Obviously, Georgia was able to beat them here in Athens. I guess that was 2 years ago that I'm thinking about. But Georgia has struggled under Tom Crean sizing up in the post. Missouri had a huge advantage over Georgia down in the front court. So I think that in terms of addressing next year and where Georgia goes from here next year, I think those are the areas of concern that they've got to address. Is that solidifying the point guard position, developing some depth there. They've brought in some shooters, and they've got to bring in a big man. In terms of where they go after next season, let's say Tom Crean is not around, I think you've got to bring in someone that is very comfortable with the Georgia area. I think that's one thing that Bruce Pearl has, going back to Auburn and that example, they've done an incredible job of recruiting the state of Georgia. And that has been to the fault of the Bulldogs. Auburn has been able to pull, countless players from McEachern, and Georgia has been maybe in conversation for some of those, but hasn't necessarily been the final destination for those players. Walker Kessler would be another example, a Georgia native who's going to play at Auburn. I think Georgia needs to get a guy. Let's say Tom Crean is not the guy, and Tom Crean is a northern guy. He's a Midwest guy. Has his roots at Marquette in Indiana rather than in the Southeast. And so I think you probably need to get a guy who feels very comfortable recruiting the state of Georgia. It's a hotbed for college basketball recruiting, especially the Atlanta area. And I feel like you've got to really own the state of Georgia in terms of recruiting, to get this program to where it wants to be.
And I think, too, Palmer, the big one that Georgia fans want is Jonas Hayes. The former assistant coach, former Georgia basketball player, obviously his twin brother, him and Jarvis Hayes are big, and he's an assistant right now at Xavier who kind of has some of those ties. So, Palmer, we do appreciate that. We will we may let you hang out in the waiting room for a little bit, but as always, a full 40 minutes of Palmer Toms here on today's show. Palmer, we do appreciate it, man. What is your next project? Because I know spring football is kind of, we'll say in the rearview mirror, but baseball's still going on.
Yeah, I'll be covering Georgia baseball here down the stretch of this season as they approach playing in Hoover for the SEC tournament. Bulldogs are really pushing towards making a run at a spot in the NCAA tournament, and they've got some challenges here coming up with Arkansas, Florida on the road, Ole Miss at Foley Field. Those are going to be some really challenging games that Georgia's going to be and Georgia Tech twice playing the home and home in the midweek. And so I'll be covering Georgia baseball, keeping up with all the latest with Georgia basketball as well. And then, dipping my toes into the recruiting world this summer, living here in Athens and covering recruiting throughout the Peach State. So looking forward to it. And thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, man. We're going to head to a break real quick. We do have a man who knows all about recruiting in Tanner Glisson down at Troup County High School. He's going to be talking with us when we come back.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Bryce Kuhn here with Around the Valley. Tanner Glisson, how you doing, sir? I see you're sporting the hat, so it's no longer the visor, but you got the baseball hat on today.
Well, I didn't know if you could wear a visor on the baseball field, so we had to go with the hat for the spring season, and we'll be back to the visor soon. There's no doubt about that.
Well, obviously, this is your first year in the dugout for Troup County, and it's been a successful one to say the least. First off, talk about the transition for you, because I know, you're obviously you know the game of baseball, but what's it been like for you to coach these kids and have a bigger role for the high school, honestly?
Yeah, well, Bryce, it was kind of weird how everything went down. You know, Craig Garner has spent a lot of time here at Troup County and had a great career here, and moved on to Northside Columbus.
I think that we lost Coach Glisson on that one. We'll have to have him back and see if he can get back in. Internet not too great up there, but I'm going to bring back in Will and Ralph, and we're going to talk. We're going to stay with baseball. We'll see if we can bring him back. Guys, can you hear me? Was that me or was that on his side?
I think it was his side.
Okay, you can hear me because I can still see him. It was a little bit laggy, but obviously, guys, we can touch a little bit on this, and I'll get Coach back on here. I'm gonna shoot him a text here in a second. But Troup in his first season wins a region championship, guys. They went. Let me get the record: 23-3 right now, 8-0 in region play. Now the region is not the strongest region, we'll say, but anytime you can get in the dugout for the first time as a head coach and do that, guys, we know this area is very good at baseball. All of us have had experience playing. Whether even down to the little league level to the high school level, it's something. So, Will, what would you say about the run? I mean, it's a pretty good run when you can flip over from the football field to the baseball field and seemingly not lose a beat within the athletic program.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for continuity. I think it was a good thing that a lot of those kids, while they are baseball players, most of them probably focus on baseball. They do know Coach Glisson, so they already had that relationship with him. And it made it easy to play for him.
Yeah, made it easy to play for him. And Ralph, we've seen a couple of these guys that are just great athletes. Obviously, Troup County has a ton of those guys out there. And anytime you go 23-3 and then 8-0 in region play, that sets you up for a pretty nice run. Coach Glisson is back. Coach, we got you here. I think a little bit of internet. That's okay.
Guys.
That's okay. We got you here. I wanted to ask you this real quick because, and Will kind of touched on it. Anytime you make the jump from football over to baseball, what has it been like just to have the success? I mean, it's been instant, really. I mean, I don't know. I know that you're kind of guy you had to build the football program up, but for baseball, I mean, there's a lot of talented guys over at that high school, and obviously, it's showing that with the product on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a pretty smooth transition for the simple fact that I'd been around the program, for 5-6 years, being at Troup High School, and having players like people like Ryan Bliss, who's starting at shortstop for Auburn now, and a lot of the football guys play baseball. So, it's been a pretty smooth transition. I had been a head baseball coach before. I had played 2 years of junior college baseball. So, it was kind of like riding a bike, so to speak. It took me a little while first of all, I want to make sure I didn't make a fool of myself. And but all in all, it's been really good. And the kids have really –
I think that we lost Coach again. I think that we completely lost Coach again, guys. That's completely okay. We'll have to talk to him sometime. Hey, it's the internet. Anytime you get outside, and I hate to say this because obviously we're located here, but anytime we get outside the area of, we'll say Columbus, like Midland on, where I'm from, we already know the internet troubles that we have. But Will, that I have, yes. Yeah. Will, you love Ryan Bliss. This kid is a kid that played at Troy. Tanner obviously knows him just from anytime you go play at Auburn. That's going to be a big deal. Troop's got a Troop has got a.
So you mean he played at Troup, not Troy?
Troop, yes. But for you, I mean, Ryan Bliss, I mean, this shows you just the product that they can put out on the field. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, Ryan Bliss is one of the best players that I've seen at Auburn in a while, especially at a premium position like shortstop. So, college baseball coaches, any of you tuning in, you might want to take a peek at Troup County High School.
Yeah, you might want to take a peek at Troup County High School. Listen, from Ralph and I covered some football games that went down there. They got some great athletes. They got some young, really good athletes. Ralph, I want to go back to the question because when you look, I was going to ask you this, when you look across and see what this area has to offer, I mean, obviously, for me, Columbus is a baseball town when it comes to baseball. There's a ton of great schools. Football-wise, obviously, Carver's up there. But when you start to branch out, you get across the river over to Central Phoenix City, they are – I mean, we don't even need to say what they can do on the gridiron. But then when you get up into LaGrange area, between LaGrange, Callaway, I mean, obviously state champions this year, and then Troup, Ralph, I mean, they've got a lot of athletes. Is it a surprise that they were able to have this immediate success for you?
No, I mean, you're playing for Coach Glisson. Every one of those kids respect him. They know who he is. They like him a lot, and they're going to trust him in which way they go. I mean, you take 2 away from Columbus this year, back-to-back games, that's saying a lot. I mean, we know who Columbus High is. They've won multiple state championships. They're probably the one school you think of in high school baseball in Columbus is Columbus High because of how dominant they've been in the past years. So you take 2 away from Columbus High this year, it's huge. And you play teams like Glenwood, who Glenwood's a very talented team in Alabama and their AISA schools, and then everyone else in your region, you're basically just beating up, honestly. I mean, but I'm not nothing to knock down. I mean, you shut out teams, 4 games in a row, 5 games in a row. It's insane. I'm looking at your schedule right now. I mean, you have like 5 games in a row, you just complete shutouts. That's saying a lot how great they are. So I'm not surprised, honestly, with the coach listening at the head because he's a great guy. I mean, we've met him multiple times, talked to him. We see how his players react around him. So anyone who's playing for him is going to play hard out.
Will, I think this is a fantastic transition because there's a certain manager that at the big league level, the guys love to play their heart out for. We're going to talk a little bit about the Braves, and I want to get ready because they're playing right now, and Adrianza is playing right field tonight because Acuna is actually out of the game.
He can play right field?
Hey, he can do it all. He can do it all. And he's already got an RBI single. The Braves are last time I checked, and we can get that score update, it's 1-0. But, Will, for you, they're opening up a 2-game series tonight. It's one of those mini series, kind of midweek, against the Yankees. And, guys, this was a lot one that the national media pundits, they wanted to fuel the fire. They want to say this could be the World Series matchup. A lot of people are saying Braves-Yankees, maybe those two could battle up the World Series. Will, I'll start with you on this. I mean, how pivotal is this series? We're sitting April 20th right now. But with the way and I'll talk about this because the Braves offense did show life in Chicago towards the end, you would like to, let's say, at least split 2 to come back, or split 1, or split the series, I should say, to come back home and maybe get back to the winning ways.
Yeah, I'm not buying that it's that big of a series. The Yankees are last place in the American League right now. I know going to Yankee Stadium is a big deal, but the Braves have done it last couple of years. A lot of these guys have been there, played there. I'm not buying that it's a big series right now. Just stay healthy at this point. Just stay healthy at this point. Ozzie got banged up in Chicago. Acuna obviously got banged up in Chicago. Just stay healthy. Get home. Get in your own bed. Get some rest. Got an off day on Thursday before we start a home series. But you're not going to see Garrett Cole. Tyon's pitching tonight. They're number 2, and after him, it's a lot of who are the Yankees going to throw out there. The Braves probably, in all likelihood, with the way the offense looked in Chicago, should win both games.
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves, the biggest story for them has kind of been what we didn't think coming into the season, the offense. But they started to pick up things up, and you're starting to see some of those batting averages get above the Mendoza line, which is obviously encouraging. Hitting is contagious, guys, and that is the big thing for me. We saw the Braves offense show life in Chicago, and what I liked about it, Ralph, was they got beat badly on Saturday. They come back on Sunday, and they return the favor, and that's kind of the bounce-back mentality you'd like to see out of an offense that has been sputtering here to start the season.
Oh yeah, but you get Ozzie back today. He's back today. He got 2 days off. Obviously, he got hit multiple times this past weekend, and none of them were intentional. I think a lot of them were just pass balls and just miscues on the pitcher. But those happen. So Ozzie's back. You don't have to worry about pitcher hitting. So Sandoval gets hit DH. So if Sandoval wants to hit a nice little DH home run tonight, he can do that. But yeah, I think the bats are starting to light up a little bit. Austin Riley, he's getting his bat working a little bit, which is surprising a little bit right now. I knew it'd take him a while to get kind of warmed up. Obviously, 60-game season last year, and he hasn't played a full year yet. So you give Austin Riley a full year, he's going to catch some heat later on in the season. And Guillermo Heredia, we saw what he did Sunday night, man. He had 2 home runs, one of being a grand slam. I mean, he's already 1 for 1 tonight. So it takes some time, guys. No one's going to be the best team in the league after the first week. You got to. You got to let them, warm up, let them get used to everything. You get fans back in the stands. It's a little more, a little overwhelming for some of these guys who have not played in front of fans. I mean, like Ian Anderson, his first career starts were in front of no one, and now he's facing in front of fans. It's a little overwhelming sometimes for some of these guys, and he'll pitch on his first start in Yankee Stadium tomorrow night on ESPN against Corey Kluber. So that's a matchup I'm excited to see. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you spoke what's huge is pennants are not won in April. They're not. And Brian Snickers said this, and I think we all three agree on this, guys, is you don't really know what you have in your team until about the end of May, start of June. That's when you say, okay, they've got enough at-bats in. We kind of know how this guy may be trending this season. But even then, 2 seasons ago, we saw Josh Donaldson struggle all the way until June, and then he took off. For you, Will, is there any – we keep saying, we keep talking, the temp check, all these different things. But for me – and especially tonight's a great example. Charlie Morton, I'm such a person, I want to look at the back of a baseball card. What does the back of the baseball card say? That's obvious. That's what you're going to get unless something crazy happens. Tonight, Morton is the Morton that I think, and up to the point we're in the bottom of the 4th right now, Morton is what Atlanta thought they were signing when they did it in the offseason. But I'm telling you, it seems like every single year, it seems almost the same story of when we had the shortened season last year. Will injuries and this depth at pitching is just going to be it's going to be tested. I mean, there's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, and good news for the Braves is they have plenty of arms that can throw, and a lot of guys that they're very high on that think could be really good major leaguers. Just got to give them a shot. But to speak on the temp check, why are we concerned about the Braves?
Yeah,
it's as long as they're treading water right now. Yeah, enjoy it. They're treading water. They're not out of it by any means. They're not putting themselves behind the 8 ball. Yeah, they're not the worst team in their league like the Yankees. And the Yankees are probably going to be fine too because they can mash the ball. They're just not doing it right now. And it's early. We know the team, the Phillies, who are they at the top of the division?
The Mets are right now. The Mets are.
Well, I don't think the Mets will stay there either.
No.
Their bullpen is a dumpster fire. The Phillies bullpen is a dumpster fire. The Braves bullpen was a dumpster fire the first 2 weeks. Has settled in and threw, I thought, pretty well in Chicago, maybe outside of Saturday, but Braves are going to be fine. It's April 20th. You don't, like you said, you don't win the pennant in April. There's no reason to be freaking out.
Yeah, they're going to be okay. I feel like they will be, and we've talked about some young arms. Ralph talked about him last week. He got roughed up, but the biggest thing, and I was telling Ralph this, is we were at the game last week when Ian Anderson threw. These guys are going to struggle, these young guys. But the problem is that the Braves are a team that is built to win a World Series right now. You just got a lot of young guys that are going to go through growing pains. It's not like, per se, the Dodgers. I mean, look at the Dodgers rotation versus the Braves, okay? They've got Kershaw, who is definitely taken his bumps and bruises in the playoffs. He's not by a young guy. Buehler, who is advanced beyond his years. I mean, he's kind of like on that, dare I say, kind of the Soroka playing level, or if Soroka's completely healthy, he's the kind of guy that really doesn't struggle. He's kind of just different. Buehler's at that level. Then you throw in Trevor Bauer. Then you throw in David Price. And then Dustin May. Their 5th guy is the one that they're kind of like, we'll see. For Atlanta right now, it's with injuries to Soroka, Fried, and Smiley, we're hoping. I mean, like a perfect example is Bryce Wilson. He dominated in his last outing of 2020. And then he comes out and he threw pretty good. It wasn't the best performance by any means. Kyle Wright didn't throw bad. He hit a record 4 hit batters ever, but he got the job done. They're going to have to work through these things. And I think that's the biggest thing is fans understand. The only way to get better, and Will, you are the biggest proponent of this, when a guy is slumping, the only way to get better is to get more at-bats. You can't sit him on the bench for 2 weeks and then say, come up and get a pinch hit appearance and strike out.
Yeah, so why is Johan Camargo at the alternate site? That's what
only because here Adrianza is raking right now. And I say this in all seriousness because I know people give you a lot of grief. The moment that Adrianza starts to slump and watch it be like May where he doesn't get a hit for like 4 weeks, Camargo will be up on the roster. I mean, it's going to happen.
You remember the last Brave? He may not be the last one, but he's the one on my mind. I think he hit 400 or over 350 in April. You know who that was?
It was Yohan Camargo.
Was it Yohan Camargo?
No. Well, he wasn't on the roster come June, I don't think. Or if he was relegated to a pinch.
Preston Tucker.
Ryan Flaherty.
Ryan Flaherty
got off to a few years ago?
Yes.
It doesn't last.
We already got a comment in here. Camargo is terrible.
Who's Camargo? Carmaga.
That's his twin sister. But no, the only way you're going to work through slumps. I mean, we had a question last week on the show, and it was, should the Braves bench Riley? Well, no, because how would you expect anyone to get better without giving them the opportunity? Now, to what Ralph said, if Riley goes this whole season and bats 190, then let's be concerned. If he, you know what I'm saying? If he gets into October, he's still batting 190. But this is not a video game. They're not all going to be 99 overalls. They're not all going to bat over 300. Also, too, people in today's game, and I know, Will, you're a little bit old school on this, where people say that nowadays that batting average doesn't matter. The Braves may be willing to sacrifice 15 to 20 points on Riley's batting average, let's say 250 down to 255, for 30 home runs.
I'll sacrifice that for Austin Riley. He's got that power. I'll give it up. But, you know, my response to should the Braves bench Riley is, who are they going to play that's better? That could be better. Because right now, Yohan Camargo is not.
Someone said that Pablo Sandoval, and Pablo Sandoval is fantastic, like a fun player. He's going to be a fun folk hero in Atlanta. He's already has that.
I could hear Adrianza, but he's too versatile. Like tonight, he's playing in right field.
Yeah.
I think the Braves are thin as an organization at third base right now. So you got to give Austin Riley those at bats.
Yeah, you have to figure out what you have. And to Ralph's point earlier, if you don't, and you trade him, well, you never really figured out what you had. So what if he goes somewhere else and becomes what people think he'd be 25 to 30 home run guy, and then you've let him go? As I think that's the big thing right now. We do have a score update. Georgia is tied in the bottom of the ninth in softball with Oklahoma. I thought at first Palmer put in the chat that it was 33-0, and I was like, holy cow. But no, Oklahoma is 33-0, number one team in the country over on the softball side of things.
It's funny you bring up talking about trading Riley, because I said in the last week, it did come out of my mouth. I wish we would have traded Riley for Jacob deGrom.
but see, that's okay. Like I could live with that. Like if I'm gonna give up a top prospect and get someone, the conversation has really been though is, you know, can Riley? Well, we don't know. I mean, he still has not played a full 162. People haven't understood that until he does that. But this is the thing. I hate when they flash the graphic up of I got two things to say before we end the show, because they hate when they flash the graphic up of Ronald Acuna's past 162 games, because it's unreal. It's unbelievable what he's done over the full season. But the big thing for it is you can't have that expectation for every single prospect that comes up. Like Christian Pache, fantastic defender. He's got to figure out the hit tool. Now, the two things you're going to do is if someone else is hot, like my boy Guillermo right now, give him the starts in center field and let Pache go down to AAA and work through these things, because Pache still has not played a full season in AAA. But
we got to let him rehab first.
We got to let him. Yes, you're completely right. I love the Twitter comment that came. This is one of the best ones. I told Ralph this. Guillermo gets the start last Thursday, and someone tweets, "So we're just done with the whole Pache like trying to play center field?" And someone comments underneath and says, "Well, he's on the IL, so he can't play now." Fantastic. And that goes to his point. They're going to prove my point. I told Ralph this. I said, the worst thing about being at Braves games is you are surrounded with people who have no idea what they are talking about. Not a clue. It was very interesting.
Screaming at the players, like, you know, do your job. And they're like, well, they're trying their best.
Yeah, Will, you would have loved it. I sat there and someone said, strike him out. I said, he's trying.
From inning 1 to inning 9. It was the worst thing ever.
It was great. Carrot Top was in attendance. The female version of Dustin May was there. Fantastic.
Female version of Dustin May.
Yeah,
exactly.
But, guys, I want to end the show off because we only have a couple more minutes, and I've got to get something to eat here. Final thoughts. What should the Falcons do it for? We're going to talk about this because obviously the NFL draft is next week. So, I mean, this is going to be a hot topic conversation. And I think we might do similar to what we did with the bracket challenge. Also, shout out to the people who won and got their prizes. We're excited that you were able to do that. The top prize was a $50 Amazon gift card, and that went to one of our winners that has nothing, didn't even know about the credit booth. So we're growing in that aspect as well. But real quick, give me a synopsis, because we're going to go in depth on this on a kind of an NFL draft, mock draft simulation we're going to do. Will, real quick, if you are the GM for the Falcons and you're the ownership, who are you taking it for? Just real quick, no explanation, but who are you taking? We'll talk about it next week.
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. All right, Ralph, you have pick number 4. Who are you taking?
Penei Sewell.
Both of those fantastic picks.
Can I give my pick for number 3 real quick for the 49ers?
Yes.
It's way outside the box.
Okay.
Jamar Chase. I think they need a receiver more than a quarterback.
Okay. Garoppolo, when healthy, has shown the ability to be effective. So it'll be interesting as Palmer rolls his head in complete defiance of what was going on. I'm just kidding. We do appreciate everyone listening, though. We do appreciate your opportunity to participate in the because, guys, we had, 65 people in the bracket challenge. I think all 3 of us finished almost dead last. But if you're interested in advertising your business on our show, we have another one in the works. Email us at thecrowdedbooth@gmail.com. You can also use that email. We had a great question. Will, I think the question that was formed to you was completely perfect in the way it was asked in the mailbag, so we do appreciate that as well. We do appreciate it. We'll see you on Thursday. We have a special guest tuning in or checking in on the show. We're not going to release the name yet, either on Thursday or on Tuesday. So I don't want to get all the hype ready for Thursday until I've confirmed it's going to be that day, but it may be a week from today. But, guys, I appreciate you being on. Have yourself a fantastic time, and Will, don't play Ralph and Neil with the show because he's not quite ready for it yet because I already beat him and he's already mad at the game. It's okay, Ralph. Anything you want to say out there to San Diego studios? Hey, that's it. Will, I'll close the show with this, but I appreciate everyone tuning in and have a fantastic rest of your week.